Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, somewhat unexpectedly, Liz Picarazzi, Sarah Segal, and Laura Zander wind up talking about artificial intelligence. They conclude that the time has come for business owners to take AI seriously. In fact, Laura says she's already experimented with using ChatGPT to create lists, to write product descriptions, and to write a marketing plan for a new product. She even used ChatGPT to prepare a presentation for her staff about how to use ChatGPT. She did this in part to reassure them they don't have to fear losing their jobs. What I told the team is, it's a nail gun, says Laura. Sometimes you need to use a hammer because it needs to be perfect and it needs to be exact. Sometimes you just need a damn nail gun and you just want to pop it through. And that becomes the skill. The skill becomes, when do I use the hammer and when do I use the nail gun? On their way to the conversation about ChatGPT, Liz, Sarah, and Laura consider the various ways business owners can tap expertise, including through advisory boards, through business groups, and with strategic weekly lunches. Plus, Laura explains why she likes to hire people even when she doesn't have an opening. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations, brought to you by our principal sponsor, The Great Game of Business, will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine named the best newsletter for business owners and which you can subscribe to for free at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Liz Picarazzi, who's CEO of CityBin, which is based in Brooklyn, New York and makes trash enclosures and package bins. Sarah Segal, who's CEO of Segal Communications, a public relations firm based in San Francisco. And Laura Zander, who is CEO of Jimmy Bean's Wool, a digital yarn store based in Reno, Nevada, and Madelintosh, a yarn supplier based in Fort Worth, Texas. The episode is titled, Brace It, Leverage It, or Die. Welcome, Liz, Sarah, Laura. It's great to have you all here. Appreciate your taking the time. Liz, let's start with you. I gather you've been thinking about whether you should have a board of advisors. What got you thinking about this?
So what really got me thinking about it was as we've grown and it's become more important for me to work externally with potential partners and collaborators and vendors, I have so many different kind of people that I'm seeking advice from or just answering a question for me. And a good number of them now want to me to have a retainer with them. So I suddenly, have like 2 or 3 vendors that I really, really would like to work with, but not necessarily in the capacity where, let's say a lobbyist of having a retainer. So that got me thinking, I don't need 8 people on a retainer. What if I just got them together like once a quarter to go over some of the main things that they all could have input in? And it really was coming from a place of, I really need the wisdom of these people. How do I interact with them? I kind of approached it from, could they be on some sort of retainer? And then I found out how much it was and realized I probably could get a lot of information by doing some sort of an advisory board. So that's where it came from. What I should say is that I don't really know much about an advisory board, how to structure it, how to form it. And that's where I'm trying to decide, do I get advice from people on how to create an advisory board? Or do I create an advisory board as I would like to have one or be on one, which probably would be a lot less formal.
Laura, you've been doing this longer than Liz or Sarah. Have you considered at any point forming some sort of board?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, I did probably 10 years ago. So maybe we were, 10 years in. And that's kind of when we wanted to really grow. And I think it was, for me, I think I was just really floundering, and didn't know which way to grow and didn't know who to trust. That was a big part of it, is I've got all these people telling me, you should do this or you should do that. And I didn't know who to believe and who not to believe. So, yeah, I decided not to, and decided to just try to find more people like Jay, people that could just be my friend, and could be mentors and that had similar experience and who have actually, that Jason Fried article that you put out the other day, about finding people who have actually lived what I've lived and who have lived what I've lived relatively recently.
Being careful who to take advice from. Make sure you take it from people who've had the experience that's relevant.
Exactly. Yep. And then the side note to that is, don't take criticism from anybody you wouldn't take advice from.
That's a good point.
I like that one.
Yeah. So for me, at this point, I'm glad that we didn't, because I think that I can just get clouded with having too many cooks in the kitchen, too many different people who have too many different opinions. And then what do you do?
But so, Laura, what I'm thinking about is having them all literally meet together. So some of the too many cooks in the kitchen could kind of get cut down in a shorter period. Like where I'm doing right now is I'm talking to like 12 different cooks, and they're giving me a ton of information. And I actually think if they got in the kitchen together, that ironically, that we would be able to really work through some things and get some answers in a more collaborative way. If it's just me one-on-one with the person who, could be the lobbyist, then I don't know, I'm not getting the perspective of the other maybe 9 or 10 people who could be around and could see, is that a good move or not?
And are you, and sorry, I'm going to sound like a total jerk. Are you soliciting advice from all these different people because you don't trust your own gut?
No, it's in areas where I haven't worked. So some of them are relating to like expanding sales with government. There's a lot of things, some technical things with product. Definitely with sales, that's an area where I think we could really grow. So it's like a little bit here and there. Can I trust my gut on certain things having to do with like hardware and those sorts of decisions? Like, no, I can't actually. I don't have anyone on my team that has some of that knowledge. It's not like I'm just fearful and I don't know how to do it. It's like stuff I literally don't understand or know.
Got it. And so you're reaching out to consultants at this point and paying people to get their input?
Yes.
And remind me, are you self-funded?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you be paying this board? Would you be paying them for their time to come together?
I would totally be willing to, and I think it would be worth it. I just don't even know how that's handled. Like, how do you approach someone with an advisory opportunity? Like, do you put the number right out there? Or, actually tactically, how do you do stuff like that?
Liz, how much are you doing in sales? Can you share that, or are you not comfortable sharing that?
I would rather not.
Okay.
You've shared it before, Liz.
I mean, is it 10 million? 20 million?
No.
Less than 5?
Between 3 and 4.
Okay. And how much do you expect to grow in the next 5 years? Are you looking to triple it, quadruple it?
She's been trying to double every year, right, Liz?
Yeah.
Okay. You're trying to double every year. So it's fast growth. And are you going to need to take money investment at some point, or do you foresee self-funding forever?
For as long as I can.
Okay.
But
yeah. So you're making a profit.
Yes.
Got it. I don't know. To me, it just seems like a distraction.
Sarah, you were for a while part of a larger operation that you parted with earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
Did that larger company have a board?
No, they didn't.
Oh, okay.
I see Liz's perspective, and like I thought about it as well. But I worry about putting too many people in the same room and not being productive in terms of conversation.
Me too.
So I actually started doing this thing this year where I'm taking somebody out to lunch once a week. Like that's my personal goal, to take somebody new out to lunch. And it's somebody I've met, or usually it's somebody unfamiliar, or, somebody who I just really want to pick their brain. And half the time it's turned into new business, which is kind of cool. But it's nice because it's just unstructured and it's an easy conversation. And if I call somebody up or email them and say, hey, can I take you out to lunch? The answers are usually yes.
How are you picking those people up?
Not necessarily a strategy to it. It's more like gut of like, yeah, I'm really interested in learning more about fractional CFOs. And so I reached out to a woman this week who is a fractional CEO for nonprofits, just to like find out what that is, what services they provide, like when I would want to consider working with somebody who does that. And so it's kind of whatever's top of mind to me.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like the informality of it.
Liz, I'm surprised that you started the first area that you mentioned, the expertise that you're looking for is a lobbyist. That it never would have occurred to me that a company your size would need a lobbyist to some extent at all, but certainly on a board.
Well, Lauren, can I share with you why that's not the case?
Please.
We're talking about trash and parking spots in New York City. And the kind of the debate between do we want, it's either rats or parking spots. You got to choose.
Wait a second. Explain that.
If you boil it all down, the debate about taking care of trash in New York City and containerizing it, it's largely about parking spots.
Because you need the space to put your enclosures. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So to containerize the trash, you would need to go in parking spots. And that's highly political for a lot of reasons. So there's just a lot of people that are involved in that. And I've definitely come up the learning curve a lot from being in it. And that might actually make the argument for not having, advisor lobbyist on that. But it's not another city where they're dealing with a little minor situation and they have enough parking. Parking is such a political issue. And that's why I say it's either rats or parking. You either containerize the trash or you put it on the sidewalk.
Who I'd take out to lunch is whoever was spearheaded the parklets. That's who I would go for.
I know her, and I happened to meet with her this morning.
Wow.
Yes.
Nice job, Sarah.
Yes, it's actually, I have to say, it's the person who was the advocate for it and for things like it, as well as the actual designer, because I am talking to them about some future collaborations, which I'm super excited about.
Liz, when I think of a lobbyist, I think of somebody that you hire to help change laws, to try to convince legislators to do something differently, as opposed to a consultant you might hire to help you understand the way the current laws work and how you can get business under the current regime. How are you thinking about using a lobbyist?
Well, so I can say I'm not hiring a lobbyist because I had one meeting with one where I could tell that I knew far more about trash and sanitation and laws about it and which city council members were on which committee. And I realized I'm on top of this already, But there are areas where, for instance, next week, there's going to be a hearing about whether restaurants can continue to put trash in bags on the sidewalk or whether they're going to be required to containerize them. So that's before the city council. Obviously, which one I want is require the restaurants to put them in containers. So that's the sort of thing where could I influence that or not? I'm not quite sure, but there's multiple things being legislated right now about trash that impact my business.
That makes sense. What are the other type vendors that you're thinking about that you would want to have part of the conversation you're imagining?
It's more about getting advice also from veterans. So for instance, in the locker space, I'll say kind of broadly, there's a bunch of companies that do lockers and a couple of them are somewhat similar to mine. And I'm talking to them and they're really just kind of being nice and we're, passing along some advice. But that would be the sort of person where I would really like to have, if I had an advisory board, have a regular check-in with that person because they're really interested in my company. And I know that they also could open a lot of doors, which is also probably the prime reason to have an advisory board if they can open doors for you.
But do they have to be on a board for you to do that? As opposed to you just checking in with them once a month?
I think that is correct. That I would rather just have a check-in once a month or even nicer, take them to lunch.
Yeah.
I think that would be a lot less time for everybody, for me, for them. So that's actually kind of an interesting idea because then I can also look forward to having lunch once a week.
Yeah.
That I would expense to the business.
Yeah.
And I would make sure to choose some lovely places, not necessarily expensive, but that I would like to have lunch at.
That's smart.
That's really smart.
Well, and then you also can break up with people more easily. So if you're not getting the kind of information, or if you find that you're not on the same page, you just don't go to lunch again, as opposed to like the formalities of, okay, now I don't want you on the advisory board anymore and blah, blah, blah. It just seems easier.
It seems like it's a way to dip your toe in the water without committing, like Laura suggested.
Right.
If there's a rush, tell us there's a rush. But if there's not a rush, take your time and, have these lunches and figure out who you really want to keep having lunch with. And then next year go, all right, those are the 5 people that have really provided sage advice. I want to put them all in a room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Love that.
Wow. You guys have really helped me work through this.
This topic did come up on the podcast fairly early on. I think it was Stephanie Stuckey who raised it. She had experience in the nonprofit world and was used to running organizations that had boards. And when she bought back the family business, she immediately thought about creating a board there. And Jay was a little bit skeptical, as you might expect. He was skeptical about whether you could find people who could really help you for the price that you could afford to pay. And I think that's probably a legitimate issue.
Someone should start a dating app for businesses.
There are services that help companies do this. I'm familiar with one. There's an organization in Ohio called Aileron. It's a really unusual organization. They provide a service where they have a database of potential board people, and they connect owners, operators with potential board members and help with the whole process of creating a board.
But even something non-formal where it's like, hey, I, work in this region and always interested in meeting with, like-minded business owners, and let's go on a date, a business date.
Well, the other way to do that is with a business group. Liz, you're a member of EO. Do you think of your EO group as something of a board of advisors?
I definitely do. I mean, I meet with the same 8 people every month for 5 to 6 hours. So, they all know me very well. I mean, in there we talk about both, business and personal. But for some of the stuff I'm working on, they would not be able to provide the subject matter expertise or experience on enough of them. But having them, I bounce stuff off of them all the time. In fact, next month, I'm giving a presentation about imposter syndrome, actually, and how I'm feeling it a lot. And I know I'm going to be very vulnerable. I'm going to be talking to 7 of my business peers about this and where it's showing up. And then, they're going to be giving experience shares about how they've experienced it. So yeah, I view them as a board of maybe not necessarily advisors, but a board of supporters.
So is EO, it's similar to like a Vistage, but it's for entrepreneurs, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It has the biggest difference is that Vistage actually has like a paid facilitator and a structure, whereas EO is totally self-run.
Interesting.
So we all get trained in the way to have conversations, trained on coaching, trained on the Gestalt method where you're not offering advice, you're only offering experiences. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities, I think, in the role that group can play in your business emotional life.
Sarah, you've given some thought to joining a Vistage group, haven't you?
And I had a conversation with a moderator. I don't know if they're called moderator or group leader. She's starting a group. Facilitator. Thank you. And it was an okay conversation, but there were a couple of things that turned me off immediately. And I was honest with her. She told me that she was working on putting together a group of only women business owners. And as a woman business owner, I don't want to be part of a women's only business owner group because I want to play in the same sandbox as everybody. So I was clear about that. And so I'm still kind of, having conversations with her. She's super nice. I don't know that this is going to be the right thing for me in particular, but I'm happy to continue to explore it.
Laura, have you been in a Vistage group?
No, I was just thinking I did EO for about a year. I have been to a couple of, like a guest at a couple of Vistage meetings. And then I was talking with a woman maybe a year ago, and she was creating a new group here in town, and I decided against it.
Why do you decide against it?
Reno's a really small town. The town that I live in is very small. And I don't know. I just felt like I would enjoy being on boards instead, and kind of focusing some of my energy and meeting new people through other ways. I don't know. I didn't enjoy the EO experience a ton.
I mean, the thing about joining groups that I've learned a couple times the hard way is that if you're not very discriminating and you start going to meetings, maybe one or two, and then you really realize this isn't a good fit for me, there can be incredible awkwardness then when you try to leave it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking back, and the woman who was going to be the moderator, I don't know. I just didn't feel a connection. I didn't feel like it was super authentic and transparent. And it was just, I don't know, just didn't seem right.
Yeah. The regional somebody or other, like she asked me a lot of questions about kind of what kind of group I was looking for. And I was very specific about saying I wanted somebody who was going to provide financial accountability and make sure that that was a huge focus of the group. Because that's important to me, just to have really smart people who understand a P&L, who understand projections and all that kind of stuff. And the group leader that they connected me with doesn't have that background at all. So that made me kind of like, all right, what I requested was not listened to initially. So that's why I kind of step back a little bit. I'm still going to, go to a lunch that they're having just to check it out. Because it may not all be about the facilitator. It may be about the people that show up. But
sure. Yeah.
Again, yeah, I think you're right. You have to make sure that it's going to be the right fit, because otherwise you're wasting their time and your own time.
And potentially your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a big part of it. I mean, that's okay. So what is it? 20 grand for the year for Vistage or something like that?
It's in that area. Yes.
So I'm like, for 20 grand, could I spend that 20 grand in other ways and get as much out of it? So yes, like there are some really smart people I know. I could go fly out to see them. Okay, that's $1,000, or $2,000 and spend a day with them. And would I get more out of doing that? I'm maybe because I'm old, but I've got no interest sitting around with a bunch of suits, and posturing and people who are just telling us, that do things by the book. So, I like a more eclectic group of down to earth kind of maybe West Coast people. So it just wasn't a good fit. It didn't feel right.
It sounds like you were right not to join that group. I would say, and I've heard lots of people talk about being disappointed with their experiences, but I've also talked to a handful. Paul Downs is one of them, who found a Vistage group that just works for them. And Paul refers to it as kind of an advisory board.
Yeah.
That the group that you're describing, Laura, I think probably exists. Whether it's worth it to you to find it or not, of course, is another matter.
Totally.
Sarah, when we emailed about this session earlier in the week, you responded in a way that suggested you were not having a great week. I think one of the things you mentioned was that you lost an employee you were disappointed to lose. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I mean, okay, so she was our second to most recent hire, and she's lovely. She's a recent grad. Yeah, this year we hired her in January. She graduated from school in December, and a delightful, great member of the team. But, she looked at me last week and she said, I feel really bad, but when I was applying for your job, I was also applying for an internship with the communications department for the San Francisco 49ers. And they took forever and randomly just got back to me and offered me a position. It's too good to pass up. And I get it. I'm like, all right, that you got to take it. I mean, it's the 49ers and it's an exciting opportunity and you got to get us some free tickets. But the hiring process is a long and painful process that my operations manager works really hard at streamlining, but having to go back through that again after you've found somebody that you're like, and you've trained them, you got them their computer, you've gotten their passwords, you've gotten them up and running, just to start again in 3 months later is just kind of painful. That's all.
I'm sure everyone else can relate.
Yep, totally.
And it's interesting though, because yesterday we had a phone call with Vanguard because we're setting up our 401k, and they were asking us questions like, when do you want people to be eligible for the 401k? And, do immediately on start or a month later, 2 months or whatever. And we landed on 3 months just because you never know. Someone may come in, work for you for a month, get a better opportunity to leave. Although I have to say that I don't know that we're going to get that a lot.
I hate it. I actually just hired somebody yesterday and she's amazing. We had talked to her about 6 months ago, and she at the time was looking for more than we could offer her. But now she hasn't gotten anything in 6 months. So her requirements have changed. So it's worked out perfectly. But it reminds me, I hate looking for people. And almost everybody at the high level that we've hired, I'm trying to think, almost everybody except for 2, we've hired when we weren't looking for somebody. In the last 4 months, we've hired 3 or 4 key employees, and we weren't hiring for people, but they came out on the market, word of mouth, referral, knew who they were, and we're like, yep, we'll make a position for you. We don't need you right this second, but you're so good, we don't want to pass you up. And that has just, that's our kind of hippie Tahoe personality, is just to go with the flow, and which is probably why we're not a $30 million company, and we should be, but it's just so much more fun, I think, to just find people and let them kind of come to you and let our paths cross. And it's so scary to me to go out and look for somebody and you have no idea who they are. They're just giving you their best answers. It's a 50-50 chance that they're going to work out. I know Jay would disagree because, that's a skill in and of itself, is hiring and figuring out who is going to be a good fit. But I hear you. That stuff just drives me crazy.
Well, and it's funny though, because you're right. You're asking these people blindly. And, references, I think that we talked a little bit about this at the meeting in Chicago, is that references are pointless.
They can be, Yeah. They totally can be. They're either pointless or they're awesome because they tell you don't hire this person.
Well, that's Jay's point. Most of the time, it's not going to help. But if 1 out of 10 times it stops you from hiring somebody that you might otherwise have hired, then it's worth doing it.
It's totally worth it. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Sarah, in that email you sent earlier this week, another thing you mentioned was painful business processes waiting for decisions to be made. Is that with potential clients that you were referring to?
Yeah. I'm sure everybody has experienced this. It's the hurry up and wait syndrome, where it's like, oh, I need to get the proposal for work on Tuesday. This is said to me on Friday. You deliver it, and then they take 2 weeks to even respond to the initial proposal. And then when they finally respond, they say something along the lines of, we're still figuring out our how we want to spend our money, and we may not be ready for PR yet. And it's like, you kind of want to just be like, listen, it's a lot of work that goes into those proposals, because we don't just cut and paste materials. We actually go in and look at their past press hits, their social media, what their competitors are doing. So we can put together a thoughtful recommendation for how we think that we can help them be successful. And so if we're doing that in an abbreviated period of time, I'll be sitting there on my Sunday on my couch working on a proposal that then you don't get back to me about. It's just annoying. And then, we've been starting to apply to a couple requests for proposals from government agencies. And, we went and we met the deadline, and they usually give this whole thing where it's like, you have to submit your proposal by this date. We're going to review and narrow it down to the finalists by this date, set up interviews on this date, and let everybody know by this date. And we met the date that we are submitting it and have not heard anything for 3 weeks. Like they've totally bypassed everything. I emailed the person. I was like, hey, just what? I know I'm not supposed to email, but like we haven't heard anything. Just making sure that like our proposal was received and this and that. And they're like, oh, well, our timeline has been extended. I'm like, great. Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get that a lot with this government work that we're doing now. There's one contractor to the city that works a lot with public housing, and they enlisted us. It's been about 2 years to work on some trash containers, and we've sent a lot of pricing, a lot of documentation. We've attended a lot of meetings, but we're still not actually a subcontractor with them. And like zero money. All of this is speculative. Like if we were to get in with the New York City Housing Authority, all of this work would be worth it. Maybe even all of this unpaid work. But then finally I put my foot down a couple of weeks ago. They asked us for some shop drawings for a meeting that they had the next day. So that's like the hurry up and wait. I just basically wrote back, like, we're not attending any more meetings and we're most certainly not sending you shop drawings unless we get a subcontract and we start getting paid. I took a big risk on doing that because this could be a huge, huge thing for us. But I finally had to draw the line. And that doesn't seem to be like uncommon, where they will bring you into potential work and really take up a lot of your time and expertise. And then something can shift or something is needed at the very last minute. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, we've had some good interactions since when I put my foot down, but it's still a little bit in limbo.
But I have some good news.
Oh,
well, it's been a long time. Like I have weird little goals that I put down for myself. And one I wrote down 2 years ago was I really want to have a chocolate company as a client.
Oh,
you told us about that at one point.
Wow.
And so I got an inbound this week and had a fantastic phone call with the founder of a chocolate company. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
Even if we don't win it, which I hope we do, it was just exciting to have that come in because my entire team knows I really want to work for a chocolate company. So everybody was like, yay. So that was really cool.
That's like the fun stuff, right? Like these little dopamine hits.
Right. And, and I don't know, I know these folks won't have much of a budget, so I can't, it's not like a huge source of revenue, but like, it's just fun. I mean, who doesn't want to work with chocolate?
Seriously.
Like, that's just, like, those are the fun. Like, we have a donut client that we've had forever. And it's
oh my God.
Who does it's easy to pitch.
Right.
It's like, it's giving candy to a baby when you talk to media, which is.
Yeah. You need a yarn company too.
I know. We've done yarn. My dear friend owns 2 local shops in the Bay Area. And
Amanda?
She would. Yeah.
Are you friends with Amanda? Are you serious?
Yeah. Amanda Matliner and I are dear friends. Like,
her aunt taught me how to knit. So that's where I learned. That's how this all started for us.
Amanda and I did our 20s in New York together. Like she and I, then we all moved out here and like, we're really close. But yeah, when we were first getting started, we're doing fine on the PR side. And we decided that we really wanted to start adding social media to our offerings because, it was something being asked of us, but we didn't have a lot of clients. So I literally called her up. I was like, can we do your social media? I'll charge you like next to nothing just so we can start building our portfolio. And she was like, okay.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. So she actually still has like half of my camera equipment over at her studio because we showed her how to take pictures and all that kind of good stuff. So she does a lot of her own content now, which is, it's beautiful. But yeah, small world.
That's pretty great. Laura, what's going on with your business?
I'm good. Spent this week really talking and digging into ChatGPT. Did a presentation, with our marketing teams and everybody about how I feel like the media is really doing a disservice and scaring so many people and so many creative people. Our teams are terrified that they're going to lose their jobs. And, so we had an hour-long conversation and I put a presentation together about how this is just an amazing tool that if we can all lean into it, like, oh my gosh, like what we can accomplish is ridiculous. We just have to think a little differently and change our skill sets. Learn to ask the right questions as opposed to learning to write the right sentences.
Give us a hint. What is the potential that you see for your business?
Oh, well, content for sure. We can be just content juggernauts, and just pump out content 5 times faster than we've ever done it before.
And are you sure it's going to be as good as you need it to be?
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't take away the human side of it. And that was the conversation that we were having is you're not going to just produce this content and then blindly put it up. You still need humans with big brains to analyze it, to edit it, to curate it, to make sure you're asking the right questions. And then the editing ability to be able to go in and say, hey, can you edit this paragraph? And you just throw it up there and it fixes all the errors and it restructures some of the sentences. I don't know about you guys, but I get stuck on, especially when my brain's moving too fast, even just structuring a single sentence or a single thought sometimes. So now I got this best friend that I can just pop it in there and I write rephrase this sentence. And maybe I have to do it 3 times, but then I'm like, perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for.
I don't know if I've ever heard such a big endorsement for this from a business owner.
Oh my God. I'll send you the presentation that I put together. It's life-changing. I'm so excited. The content that we can put together for just blog posts or social media or whatever. Give me a list. I threw together, give me the best place to knit in every state in the country, right? How much time would it take you to pull that together? Now, all of a sudden, I can come up with all these lists. I can come up with all these ideas. Hey, I just made this sweater and I loved it. What should I make next? And then it'll tell me. How cool is that?
That's really cool.
I second her endorsement 100%.
Yes. It kills me.
With the human touch, but yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I've used it a lot for planning. For example, so I was talking to a client about a words program. And I was like, God, I don't want to sit there and write down the bullet list of all the things that need to happen to develop an awards program. So I literally went to ChatGPT. I was like,
yes,
give me a list of all the things that I would have to do to start an awards program.
Exactly.
And it did it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take that one out, that one out, that one out, and that one out because it's irrelevant.
We did the same thing with I said, give me a marketing campaign for XYZ. And then our marketing team is relatively junior. So it would have taken them, first of all, they'd be completely intimidated. They don't know how to put together a marketing campaign. So it's not that it's the end all be all, but it just gave them, it's a mentor, it gave them a structure. And so then I said, okay, now give me the marketing plan. So now they have a plan, so it's a teaching tool.
The first question was structure a campaign or?
Yep. Give me a campaign. So it came up with slogans and it's a kickstart.
And then the next question was give me the actual plan and that laid out how you roll it out.
Step by step. Yeah. So the human brain is not meant to remember. It's meant to process. I'm like, this is once again another way for us to think at a higher level, right? So let this do the legwork and let it do the repetitive tasks like writing product descriptions. Once we can teach it our tone and what words we do want to use and what words we don't want to use, our team's so sick of writing product descriptions and that copy, and they all end up sounding exactly the same anyway. We're so excited to bring on this new yarn. So this helps give them a bit of a break so that they can focus their energy on more creative stuff and stuff that only humans can do.
Laura, I just highlighted a story in the morning report.
I read it.
About how shoppers are starting to use ChatGPT to search and actually make purchases. Does your thinking include anything along those lines?
I had not, but I sent the article that you put out this morning. I just sent it over to our entire team before this podcast and was like, this is a must read. I want everybody to read this and then let's talk. So no, we're so excited about it. Just the potential. It's just a tool. And what I told the team is I'm like, it's a nail gun. Sometimes you need to use a hammer because it needs to be perfect and it needs to be exact. Sometimes you just need a damn nail gun, and you just want to pop it through. So, and that becomes the skill. The skill becomes when do I use the hammer and when do I use the nail gun?
I haven't even downloaded it, if that's what you call it. So what do I download it in the App Store?
No, you just type in ChatGPT into your browser and it will pop up and you log in and it lets you start doing it.
Wow.
You type in a couple, literally, you can type in prompts that are like, draft me a quote about the importance of trash enclosures in major cities.
Yes.
In terms of prevention of, rats and mice and other things that could impact people's health. And it will give you a quote. I guarantee that you'll be like, oh, damn. Yeah, that's good.
Yep. Liz, I'll send you, if you're interested, I'll send you the presentation.
Please
and
do.
I'd love to see it too.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I mean, it's rough. It wasn't meant for public consumption. So please don't critique it.
Well, seeing how it's tailored to your team, like giving a presentation to your team about this, I think it was probably really useful for them.
I hope so. I mean, it's been on my list to like dig into and figure out how we could leverage. And then I got feedback that, we have mostly women, that the girls were very scared, and they hate the idea of this. And it's that kind of fear mongering.
It's not going to take people's jobs.
No, it's not.
And I, having been a member of the media, it's like 3 weeks ago, everybody was talking about how the recession is going to make the sky fall.
Yes.
And this week it's about like the ChatGPT taking everybody's jobs away.
And we're going to get ruled by computers.
My feeling is if you either embrace it and you leverage it or you die.
Or you die. That's exactly. And that's what we talked about. And I'm like, if you guys can learn using it as a skill in and of itself. So if we can learn this skill and develop this skill, you're going to be like heads and tails above everybody else. Like you put that on your resume.
Laura, did you ask ChatGPT to prepare your presentation about ChatGPT?
You're so funny. Doug asked the same thing. Yes, I did for some of it. Absolutely.
And it was good?
Oh, yeah. No, it's great. I mean, again, you have to use your critical thinking skills to figure out what to keep and what to throw away. So, the human part is never going to go out. But it's such a great, give me 10 names for this new product that's going to appeal to 45 to 65-year-old women on the West Coast with higher than average disposable income and is related to blah, 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 blah. And then it's a springboard.
How does it do that? Don't get it.
Who cares? I don't know how my car works either.
Well, we will be talking lots more about this, I suspect, but we got to stop now. Unfortunately, thank you all. My thanks to Sarah Segal, Liz Picarazzi, and Laura Zander, and to our sponsor, The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thanks, everybody.
Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN@21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.